Greetings, I'm Pastor Connie Winter-Eulberg, and I'm the pastor of King of Glory Lutheran Church in Boise, Idaho. And I am introducing to you today Rachel San Diego. I got to know Rachel because she was a member of my daughter's congregation in Valdez, Alaska. And then Rachel got the call to ministry, and so she moved to California and started seminary at PLTS. And she became a member of the congregation I served in California. Welcome, Rachel. It's so exciting to know that you are on your way to internship, but I have questions for you about what has gone on in seminary. So Rachel, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to meet you. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me and learn more about me. Just to give you a little bit of background, my name is Rachel San Diego. My pronouns are she and her and hers. I'm here in Belmont, California right now, and I want to share that I am Filipino Chinese American, and my father came here from the Philippines, from Manila, Quiapo in Manila, and my great grandparents, grandma and grandpa, came from the Philippines. My grandfather came in the 1920s from Ilocos in Bansilog, and my grandmother came in the 1940s from Pangasinan. So I take with me them as well when I share these stories.
It's wonderful. Thank you. So tell us about how did you respond to God's call? What happened with that and understanding that you were responding to the call from God?
It's such a big question to ask me. What does it mean to respond to God's call, and when did it happen, and how was it just happening like that? And it's been a long process to continuously respond to God's call and the Spirit alive and within me, as well as all around me, and wanting to continue to follow that call. And so prior to seminary, I had left an 8-to-5 job about maybe 7 years ago in sales. I had known I'd always wanted to help people in the community, and I prayed with my Bible study a long time ago to be able to leave that work and do the work that I felt was being called in my heart. And so from there, I was able to leave, and I moved to Hawaii, and I did work with youth who were experiencing homelessness. I worked in a drop-in center that shared medical supplies as well as basic survival needs, and provided services for them as well as a health educator. And so from there, I also worked with youth who were incarcerated and youth who were living in emergency shelters. And with my team, we would go out into the community and we'd share basic survival needs, and I'd hear stories all the time. And even when I was working within facilities, because I thought back then, when I was younger, I used to want to be a psychologist. So I knew how to cultivate spaces that allowed people to share their stories. Here I would be leading a workshop on how to have healthy relationships, and out would tumble these stories of the lives that these kids have led, and the harm that they've endured and the difficult lives that they had. And as I was doing that, I started to ask, how do we prevent this from happening? How do we help these youth? Because I'm seeing new youth every single day, every class. How do we help prevent this from happening? And I started reaching out to different facilities, and I learned that a lot of these facilities were just doing work interventionally after it had happened. And when they found out the work I was doing, comprehensive care for intervention, they asked me to also lead workshops in their facilities. And as I started to work in different facilities, I started to see similar stuff happening. And I didn't feel equipped. I prayed. I worked alongside my Bible study. The theology that I was learning then, it didn't fit. I couldn't understand why these youth who people looked at as criminals, or youth who were in foster care that were bouncing from different homes, and they were trying so hard. Why were things happening to them? And even when I would go into schools, I would hear similar stories, but just the stories were just different. And so I thought, how do we prevent? How do we work towards prevention? How do we work? And I want to do things that were in a communal sense. And so I felt the urge and call me towards Alaska, where I ended up in Alaska, where I moved into prevention work. I moved into a local domestic violence and sexual violence organization where I worked as a prevention coordinator to build a prevention program to prevent power and control-based violence. So I learned from a research standpoint how to do it from a public health side, as well as social work side. And I was working alongside community leaders within a coalition to prevent violence. And as we learned how to prevent violence, I learned that preventing power and control-based violence, like domestic violence, sexual violence, even violence within workplaces, it's the same thing as preventing detrimental substance use. It's the same thing as preventing suicide, preventing triggering for mental health issues. And as I saw the leaders coming together, and I saw the work coming together, I knew that there was more. I didn't know that there was more, actually. Other people were planting seeds in me, telling me that there was more as well. And I continued to come to God and ask, why is this happening? There's so much pain. I'm hearing so many stories, and I feel like I had to continue to remind myself I can't save them, but how do I work alongside them to continue to prevent these from happening? And at that time, I had met Pastor Kaitlin. She had introduced me to the Lutheran Church. She had introduced me to the ELCA, and she had been planting seeds in me to think about becoming a pastor, because I had so many questions for Jesus, for God, for the church. As I'm doing this work, where is the church? Where is the community? I go to church on Sundays and we talk about loving our neighbor. We talk about helping one another. But why wasn't I seeing more church people out there doing the work? And so she told me I should think about following a call in seminary, following a call to be a pastor. And I thought, no way. Like, I don't see anyone who looks like me. I just through Pastor Kaitlin, just through the Lutheran Church, it's my first time even meeting people who are welcoming to LGBTQIA+ people in the church, a welcoming towards them, not just to say that you're welcome in the church, but also that you may be called as leaders. It's my first time I was starting to see more people of color in leadership positions, as well as it was my first time seeing women lead congregations. And that was phenomenal. I was in disbelief. When I met Pastor Kaitlin, I could not believe it at all. And she said, wait till you meet other pastors in the church who are also women of color, or just women as well. And so, and queer women as well. I at the time, like I said, I keep feeling like I don't have all the tools in me to do the work that I was doing. So I was looking to apply for my master's in either public health or social work. But I kept thinking about seminary. Because Pastor Kaitlin kept talking about it, and I kept looking into it and thinking, what if? And I text her late at night and say, do you really think I could be a pastor? Do you really think that this could happen? And she'd say, yes, I do, but it's up to you. Like, it's your call. And I watched this show. I don't know if you're familiar. It's called Marvelous Miss Maisel. And she talks about thinking if she should be a comedian in the show, and someone tells her, if you're going to do it, you got to go all in 150%. And I thought, why am I looking at these different master programs? If I'm really thinking about it, I should go all in also. And here I am going all in still.
And we are so appreciative of it. Oh, it's wonderful. So tell us so you just finished 2 years of classwork in seminary at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary in Berkeley, California. So, but you did this, the 2 years, which is really a 3-year program. So this was like, so tell us about that, and how it was to to not sleep for 2 years, essentially, and tell us about aha moments. Was there aha moments at seminary? I know there was tons, but if you could maybe pick one or so, one or two, let us know.
Doing it in 2 years was hard. It was difficult. It was strenuous. We say the term back breaking. I think it was bone breaking. It was soul breaking. And I don't mean to bring it crushed my soul, but it forced me to realize how much more my soul can expand, how my body can expand. And when we talk about it being physically tolling on my body, it's that physical tolling, it's that emotional tolling, it's that spiritual tolling, and as well as mental mind tolling. And yet it was so flourishing. It shared with me what the communion of saints look like, the people who walk alongside me. It showed me what life abundant looks like and how different it can be, even when you're still just working in the same spaces you are being in. It showed me how to understand and find God and the Spirit in spaces like the flowers and the earth all around you and in the community. And when you ask me about aha moments, when I shared about being in circles with youth and learning and hearing their stories, I didn't share earlier, but I felt like it was always me learning at those times and realizing that I don't have the capacity to heal them. I don't have the capacity to fix this situation. I felt so ill prepared. I felt so inadequate. And at seminary, I learned that I don't need to have the tools. I don't need to necessarily have all this academia of knowledge. All I need to have is a willing heart and open ears, and to be present and allow my heart to just be present and open and to listen, and that people are yearning to be heard for what they are saying, to be seen for who they are. And it's not for me to place labels upon them. It's not for us to tell them what to do or how they can change, but to share with them, and not even share, I want to say to reflect back to them what they are sharing, to reflect back to them the beauty and the glory and the grace found within them, and the value, the vast value they hold by doing nothing more than just being exactly who they are. It does not matter where they came from. It does not matter what they've done. It does not matter, I want to say who they are, meaning status wise, identity wise. It just means who they are as a person. But I want to also say it does not mean to say that their experiences and knowledges don't count, because they come with such experience, such a unique experience, such a unique background that makes them gifted in who they are. And so those aha moments came after doing chaplaincy and sitting in the hospital and learning from people, and then taking that back in seminary and learning that as long as I was just sitting and being present and hearing from them, and I was doing as much as I could, and allowing God, allowing the Spirit to do the rest, allow the Spirit to move in the way that it moves. And I hope it's okay. Can I just give one more aha moment? It also taught me what love, a love that's non-fractional. And I heard this from a chaplain the other day, a love that's non-transactional. It's not I give and therefore you give back to me. It's I love because love is limitless within me, because the Spirit that resides in with me. Martin Luther says, and I may butcher the Latin, so please, I apologize, but he says, finitium escapa de infinitium. I think I said it wrong, but just in case, that which is finite holds that which is infinite, that though we are finite bodies, bendable and breakable, the Spirit resides within us, so we are infinite, each of us.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you. So, can you tell us a little bit about how it's been to be one of the few queer people of color at seminary? What's that been like for you?
It hasn't. It hasn't been easy. It's been hard. We talk about anti-racism a lot, especially this past year with everything happening. I want to say with the anti-racism reckoning, but it's more of its uncovering of what's been present all along and the experiences of people of color and the painful experiences, as well as this joy of life that we're seeing and allowing to flourish when we're putting people of color first. It's having to, as a person of color, start to recognize how often people of color are represented and how often they're able to tell their own story and who's telling that story. Is it coming from another person of color? Is it coming from them? And the anti-racism movement, I see in the church being built socially, communally, and also interpersonally between relationships, and to me also individually as a person of color, having to do that own work my own self. I can't look out there and say how systemic racism affecting other people and how are people affecting one another. How am I affecting other people as well? And so being an only person in some classes in my own cohort, I was the only person of color. So in many classes, I was the only person of color, yet we're talking about racism constantly. And so we're hearing about it hypothetical, we're hearing about it from books, sometimes written by white authors. And so as a person of color, having to say, stand up and say, sometimes, how can we hear this from other people of color? How do we bring more people of color's voices into the classroom? So even I have mentors who help me to learn that I don't have to fight every fight, that in learning how to take a step back, I can allow other people to come forward and share and speak up. And I don't know how else another word besides for fight, but I don't want to say just fight, but how to move and mobilize and get people excited to do the very needed anti-racism work, the anti-Asian violence work. As an Asian woman, that is incredibly important to me. But I need to heal also because it raises up the own violence I've experienced in my life in different forms, whether it's emotional or has been physical or has been systemic racism, and how it's affected me and those uncovering. And so sometimes, and so when my mentor shared, it's important for me to learn, because you asked, how has it been like to learn to take a step back so I can take time to breathe and heal, and like a cycle, allow those who've been healing and resting to come forward and to take charge and continue to move the mantle. And then when it is their time to take a break, then I can come forward, and like a cycle, we go like this, but we're doing it constantly hand in hand. And it's not just for me to do by myself.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And as a queer person, Kimberly Crenshaw talks about intersectionality and the different parts, the difficulties even more, because it's not just doing it from a person of color side, but it's also doing it as a voice who's in the queer perspective and talking not and how speaking up counts, and also understanding the heteronormatives, and that meaning that the heterosexual normatives are ways of life that people are so used to just doing and not realizing how they impact those who don't identify in that way. Has also forced me to look at what about other identities that maybe I don't identify with, but that are marginalized as well. Perhaps those with disabilities, both visible and invisible. And what are we doing to raise up those issues that are taking place in the way that they're affected? And how are we allowing representation to count, as well as allowing them to speak with their own voices or use their own words?
Thank you. I'm so glad that people are able to hear that you say this. I think that this will be a blessing for others, but as others also realize that we need to act, to show up, to stand up, to speak up.
And I say this because perhaps some of you may not identify as a person of color, but see me speaking, and I just want to name that if I were I know from what I learned that I speak now in this interview, or if I were to speak in class or in a conversation afterwards, it's not just that conversation where that emotional weight will take place. I'll go home and I'll think about it, the things that were said, and that weight that I carry. It doesn't just stay in that conversation, it goes with me afterwards as well. And so how do I find ways to take self-care and to tend to the wounds as well? And to do so in a way that allows other people, to invite other people to be a part of that work too.
Mhm. Right. I'm really glad we're one of the reasons why we're doing this video is so that everyone can understand, to see you and understand who you are and get to know you a bit, and that you're on your way to an internship. But this internship is a special one. This internship is something that the ELCA was able to put together for you, because the internship has a female woman of color who is the supervisor. And that has been important for you to have. And I am so glad that your supervisor stepped forward and said, yes, I want to be a mentor for Rachel San Diego. And because I think people can understand here, just listening to you, wow, you are someone that, oh my gosh, I'm sure there's people saying, I want her as my pastor. And I keep talking to you about, I am so glad that you are my colleague, so but that it's important for you to be mentored by a supervisor who is a woman of color. And we are raising money in order for that internship to happen at a church that really hadn't planned on it, but a church that said, yes, I'm going to stand up and yes, we want to do this. We want to go on this journey with Rachel, and how wonderful that is. But I want you to talk about, if you could talk about your internship congregation, and what is up for you. What is, so you're starting soon and you're traveling to Seattle, Washington.
Yes, I moved to Seattle, Washington next week on the 9th. I'm ecstatic. I'm excited and terrified. My mentor calls it terra-sided. I'm terra-sided to head out. I'm going up to Seattle. The pastor who will be my supervisor, Pastor Priscilla Austin, up in Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Seattle. And I'm so excited. You've heard a bit about my background of community organizing, as well as working alongside people in the community and that are in marginalized positions. And so the work that they are doing out there is also what I'm super excited about. Pastor Priscilla also identifies as a woman of color. She's a pastor of color, and they are doing work in the community as well as in the congregation. I know right now during COVID, because they closed the doors to the church and went online, they use their church to house people who are experiencing homelessness. I know that recently the church helped to put on, became a vaccine site as well to help administer vaccines. And so Pastor Priscilla is doing phenomenal work in the community. And prior to interviewing with different supervisors, I interviewed different interns. And they talked about how the relationship with the supervisor is so important. And I've shared a little bit about my background. I just want you to know that I grew up Catholic as well as non-denominational Christian. And so most of the pastors I saw were always cisgender, heterosexual white males. And so in my mind, though I know that a pastor can be anybody, subconsciously, I still can't help but look to white males also as the model of what a pastor looks like. I'm trying to break that mold still, but having a supervisor that's a woman of color helps me continue to see and feel confident about who I am and about my call. That yes, God called me, that no, I don't look the same as everyone else, but that's what makes me unique. And so being led and learning from my mentor and supervisor, Pastor Priscilla, I'm hoping to also learn what it's like, how to navigate, what that looks like. I've shared with you some of the things that come up in school and classes and emotional weight and spiritual weight it's taken, but how do I also do self-care? How do I reach out to my networks? How do I resource with people all around me? How do I call on the Spirit to do the work when I need to rest and sit down, or even when I am standing and moving and working?
Great.
I'm so excited. I have
I
so
am so
many.
excited for you. I'm going to love it to walk with you through this, the seminary. I mean, so the internship experience is just great.
And
So,
it's been phenomenal. We came in, we thought when we taught me and Pastor Priscilla came in, there was a threshold we had to hit to make sure that it happened. And it was, we didn't know for weeks. And we kept saying, like, we have to, what's our backup plans? We don't know how much money we're going to raise. And talking about how are we also leaning on the Spirit? How are we leaning on community members to make this happen, to allow this to come to fruition and happen? And so praying together, working, having conversations with people, meeting churches like yourself who are helping to raise money. And it has been phenomenal. I cannot tell you how grateful I am to see the ELCA Church, to see this. I come from the Sierra Pacific Synod, the Synod coming together, from the Northwest Washington Synod coming together, out in Boise, Idaho, saying that they would love to help also. My goodness. I have churches, different churches out here as well. And in Valdez, Alaska, they're helping too. And a couple of churches here in the Bay Area. I can't say, the words don't express how much gratitude I have, how excited I am, because I know that I'm not doing this by myself. I'm walking alongside other people, hearing and meeting people. I know I haven't got to meet you all, but at other churches saying they're praying for me, they're walking alongside me. That has been so tremendously impactful, just to know that it's my call, but I'm not walking by myself. I'm not praying alone. I'm not doing the work alone. I always used to say it's for the community, so it's by the community. And the work I'm doing, I hope that it's for the community and by the community as well.
yes. And we pray. We know that for you and for this internship, for your supervisor, for the wonderful people of the church that you will be serving. And we know that they are going to love you. And you're going to meet so many different people, and they're going to love it that you're a listener and that you're with them and that you're honoring them as for who they are, for all the people that you're going to be talking to. Thanks, Rachel. And we praise God for you and for God's call to you and the Holy Spirit working in your life for all these years. Blessings to you. And we will be praying for you here at King of Glory in Boise. This is such a delight. Thank you. May God be with you. May God hold you in her hands, the strong hands of God, to be able to protect you and honor your gifts and bring to you people that are greatly hospitable and will welcome you to the Seattle area and show you all the different things that you can do and all the adventures that you can have in ministry and on your days off. So blessings to you.
Thank you so much.
So I'll keep in touch, because we all want to know how it's going to be going. And so I'll keep everybody abreast of what's going on with the internship. I'm really excited about this. So blessings. Thank you for speaking with us today. This has been really wonderful.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you'd like to say as we end?
Thank you. And I do hope to meet you all one day, even if through Zoom. The new normal. And also, may God be with all of you as well.
Thanks, Rachel.